Milbury is brought to you by Shaw's and Star Market, perfecting the art of fresh by findmassmoney.gov, and by John Sewer, the name to know when your drains don't flow. And he joins us this week on the Harbor One Hotline. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how are you guys?
How you doing?
Good. That voting fraud thing is disturbing, isn't it? Like, I mean, how does that happen? I mean, now I go to the polling place. I don't even have to show an ID, and I get a ballot. How does that work out? Is there something wrong with this picture?
I mean, Mike, I'm surprised you don't do the mail-in ballot. I mean, you live on the Cape. You're getting up there in years.
Will you stop with the age thing?
Maybe you should run for office, Mike.
I'm thinking about it.
Are you?
No, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on down here in Mashpee that's sort of important stuff. And
yeah.
There's some people that are a lot older than I am in position of power, so maybe I'll give it a shot. But
you'd make a great.
Right now,
you'd make a great select person in Mashpee.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with select men.
Okay.
you can keep the person to yourself.
Not surprising.
And what's surprising is Draymond Green gets 5 games for a headlock. For a headlock, Jesus, punch somebody.
I was saying yesterday. Listen, he only punches his own teammates. But I was saying yesterday that he's a repeat offender, and then everybody was all over me saying, "Don't you remember the Pistons and the Celtics in the '80s, and Bill Laimbeer and Latrell Sprewell?"
I do. I remember it fondly.
Yeah, and so I guess I'm on an island, not Mac Island, but another island where. I don't necessarily think the NBA should be about that. I think the NHL should and is lacking when it comes to the amount of fights that occur. But we might differ there, Mike, you and I.
There's hardly any fighting anymore. I mean, It's way down. I mean, that's because of the rules they put in and concussion protocols and all that kind of stuff. It's not an issue anymore.
What may not be down is the amount of fun that an NHL team can have when visiting Montreal. Seems like Jim Montgomery put the guys through a pretty tough bag skate this week, and speculation was that there may have been a late night out the night before, may have been some that were overserved, and I'm sure you've been there in Montreal. That's the right thing for him to do, right, when it comes to his team?
Well, I don't know the particulars, but I do know that I'm seeing little prickly parts of Jim Montgomery that I hadn't seen in the past, and I'm glad he's showing them. I mean, he needs to be in control. He needs to exhibit discipline, exert it on his team. And if the story you're giving me is correct, and I have no reason to doubt you, Greg, because you're always a bastion of truth.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess I'd say fine. That's fine. Everybody, and I'm sure not everybody went out if people were out.
Yeah.
But everybody has to pay the price. It's a team thing, and it's that can be bonding.
I'm sure
both the trip out and the bag skate.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's not, they're adults. So I'm sure when you, well, maybe I'm not sure, but when you came into the league, I'm sure the guys would go out the night before games. I mean, LB used to talk on the old show about when he got in the Bruins locker room the first time, and there were guys that would have a beer between periods or smoke a butt between periods. Do you remember that?
I don't remember. I remember the cigarette stuff, but never anybody having a beer between periods. I never saw. But I think guys were pretty good about the night before. I mean, I think everybody knew it was important enough. And I'm not saying people didn't go out and have a beer or a glass of wine, but I think people respected the curfew, which was usually 11 o'clock. And they were in by then. And I mean, listen, there were times where people crossed the line, and sometimes it reflected in their play, but it wasn't that often. It really wasn't. I mean, I think there was good teams. No matter how good you are, you can't get away with that on a regular basis. You're gonna trip and fall on a few nights if you start doing that regularly. And in the long run, and you're going to be lesser team for it. So I didn't see it as a major issue. Yeah, guys went out the night before a game occasionally. After the game, that's a different story.
Mike, you've been pretty outspoken when it comes to the death of Adam Johnson. Were you surprised that there was an arrest made, manslaughter connection?
I don't know how to mete out justice here. I think he was reckless. I think he was careless. I think it was extremely dangerous. And I thought to myself, I guess if I were a commissioner in that league, I would have banned him for life. And I think that's an appropriate punishment. Should more happen? I don't know. It's a difficult one for me to assess, but I do think it was so dangerous a play, and I think it was a somewhat intentional play, not to cut him obviously, but to stop him using his leg and his skate as a block. Merited, that kind of lifetime suspension. Should more happen? I never like to see the courts get involved in any kind of on the field or on the ice kind of actions, but I guess we'll see what happens in due course. But I can't imagine it's going to be, a lifetime sentence or something.
Well, I mean, it is an extraordinary circumstance. It doesn't happen a lot where somebody dies while playing professional sports. So there's not much in the way of precedent. But I don't think, we talked about it yesterday, and I don't think that there has ever been a professional athlete who has been charged with manslaughter for something that occurred on a field or in a rink. I don't think it's ever occurred in history, I don't believe. I mean, what happened with Maurice Rocket Richard? Was there, this is going way back, Mike.
Yeah,
I had just started on the radio, 1942.
Yeah, did you get those tickets on StubHub?
But was he somebody swung a stick and hit somebody in the head. There were no helmets, and I think there were charges filed, I think.
Yeah, and don't ask me for the particulars on
Okay.
that one, but it was a long time ago, and even before my time, Greg.
Yeah.
Well, did McSorley get charged? I know
There
there
was a
wasn't
back and forth on whether he should have been
and
charged.
there's been that a number of times over the course of history in the league, and eventually, most of those things go away. I mean, remember when Chara hit? Who did he hit in?
Pacioretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pacioretty. I mean,
Pacioretty.
there was people were asking for legal action in that instance.
Yeah, they were calling 911.
It was and it happens. I mean, but fortunately, most of the time the courts back off and they let the league take care of whatever punishment they feel is appropriate. And this one with the death, though, is, you're right. It's a whole, it's a different animal. It's just really hard to get your hands around what should happen to this guy. But in my opinion, he was reckless. He was dangerous. He should never be allowed to play in that league or any other league again, and that should be at the very least.
Mike, Jim Montgomery said this week that the single reason they sit with the record they sit with is the goaltending. Would that being said by him, would you ever want at any point this season to trade one of those guys?
There's no urgency whatsoever now. That's the beauty of the position they're in, as they were last year. And again, nobody saw this coming again, where they're just on top of the world here. And, Jim Montgomery's got his magic beans that he sprinkles around, and everybody plays great. There's no pressure whatsoever. But in a salary cap world, if, things happen and somebody becomes available, I think you have to continue to explore it. I think Don Sweeney did a great job at the deadline last year. He clearly is on top of things in terms of who's moving where, and I think he should be again. But he, there isn't a real compelling reason to make any huge change. Although the part of me that says having two goalies like this is just, it's almost too much of a good thing, and you should be able to find some way to turn one of them, in my estimation, Allmark, if they were going to trade one, into, another offensive weapon, which seems to be their only, and they showed they could score in Buffalo, but it seems to be their only question mark.
Well, Mike, let's not specifically say we know we have great assets here. If you're the GM of this franchise in this organization, you're obviously looking at, okay, what's the area where we might potentially need help that would then lead us to go down the road of acquiring somebody, potentially trading somebody. I know you got plenty of time, but if you're looking at this team right now, where's the one area that you could say They're playing great, but we need to keep our eyes on this. If we don't get better at this, we might have to maybe make some moves.
It's offensive production. I mean, you take out two great centers, and as much as they've been able to cover the tracks of that loss, they're still looking at 19-year-old and Zaka, who's new to the position, playing very well, and so is Potra, not given as much opportunity to play in offensive situations. But if center is such a key component to your success, and I mean, listen, things are going pretty well for them. Again, no rush, but if you're looking for something to add, adding another centerman of quality centerman or a quality centerman in the making, to me, would be the thing that you'd be looking at. But again, without having any kind of losing streak or pressure on the coach, there's no need to make a trade, and that's a great spot for the general manager to be in. One of the few times when he can actually enjoy watching his team play.
Different subject. As a guy who's been a head coach and a GM in the NHL and is a lifelong Patriots fan, where do you stand on the Bill Belichick question, and do you think he should be coaching this football team next season?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess my question is to myself is, why would he do it? I think we mentioned that, it would be because he loves to do it. And, I hope he's not doing it for the record. Maybe he is, but that seems to me he doesn't need it. And, he's given us so much in terms of fun afternoons of football, and so much in the way of exhilarating moments. And I'm not saying he's the only reason why, and I don't want to get into Brady and Belichick, but this guy has played a significant role in the team's success. I don't know if he's going to be around for the long run for the rebuild, and therefore I think probably it's time for the change for him, for his own good. I mean, who wants to start a whole new rebuild when you're 71 years old? Now, I don't care if he goes anywhere or just goes to Nantucket and plays golf and goes fishing. But I just don't know why anybody in his position would want to go through the treacherous and difficult and certainly no sure thing of a rebuild. And clearly, they have to rebuild.
Mike, one of the things, I was having a conversation with my guy, Freddie, who works at
Wiggy, did that make sense?
Wiggy wants him here.
Okay.
Wiggy thinks you make a big mistake if you get rid of him. I agree.
Yeah, I think I think that the man can still coach and it just be stupid. And then I have an unbelievable lead / what's the new segment called?
Just asking.
Coming
up in 5 minutes.
And it's been sitting. I've been trying not to spoil it.
Okay.
So I'm going to stick with the hockey talk.
Okay.
Thank God.
Hey, come on, Wiggy, spill the beans.
He's got to save it for the next
I got to
segment.
save it.
If you don't get to your question, the next segment's going to happen at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I was talking to my guy, Freddie, from
Fresh just ended his show right now.
Meridian Market in East Boston, and he brought this up to me. He said that Bertuzzi is not really
Italian.
he's not really comfortable with where he's playing and wants out. Is this somebody that maybe because of the success that he had last year, especially with the Bruins, is this something that you could potentially see them maybe knocking back on that door? Because he was he did have I think he led the team in scoring in the postseason last year.
Yeah, he wants out because he signed a 1-year deal. He goes to Toronto and thinks he's going to play with all these great players, going to jack up his numbers, and all of a sudden he's going to hit the money rainbow. And I don't know if that speaks about his character, but he's had a terrible season. And again, the Bruins are in a position where they don't have to rush to trade for anybody. Would you like to have him back in the lineup? He can be a little bit of a disturber. He had some good moments offensively. Yeah, I don't know how that trade comes together. Again, I think it's incumbent upon a general manager to constantly turn over every stone to see if there's something there. I don't think they should be in a rush to get it done, but he's not playing very well, and I'm sure they'd contemplate in Toronto, they'd contemplate a trade.
Mike Milbury, thank you. We'll talk to you. we may not. Are we talking to you next week? It's Thanksgiving. On
No,
Thursday.
happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. All right.
Take-
Enjoy Thanksgiving.
I will.
All right, Sean, are you working Thanksgiving?
I'm not here on Thanksgiving Day. I'm here the day after on Friday.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll fit you in next week. Mike, thank you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
All right, see
We
you
don't
guys.
talk to you before that.